We're now 4 months out from Election Day, and Governor Abbott is leading Beto O'Rourke by 6 points, according to a new poll by the University of Texas Politics Project. It also shows 59% of Texans think the state is moving in the wrong direction. We get some insight from political consultant Mac Makoviak, the president of Potomac Strategy Group.
Well, Matt, thank you for joining us. I want to dive into this poll at 6 points now separating the governor from Beto O'Rourke. Is that close enough to worry?
Well, we're obviously still, 3.5, 4 months out. We're in the dog days of summer. And when you look at the issues that have come before the voters, the poll respondents, you've had some divisive issues come up. Obviously, there's a lot of divisiveness surrounding the border. The issue of Roe versus Wade is a divisive issue. You add all that up, and you could see why Abbott may be taking on a little bit of water at the moment. The question of a poll is only going to be as good as its sample. And when you're in the summer, you're testing registered voters. You're not testing likely voters. So that enthusiasm gap, which we presume has benefited Republicans in the current political environment, is not being accounted for. One of the big question marks is whether the Roe versus Wade decision, the Dobbs decision, is likely to increase the enthusiasm Democratic voters feel and maybe change the political environment somewhat. I still believe that Abbott's going to win by a pretty solid margin, 8 points on the low end, 12 points on the high end. Depends a lot on what the fall looks like. But Beto has narrowed the gap a little bit. And that does present a scenario where the race could potentially be competitive. I don't think it will be, but we'll see.
How do you account for that gap in his electoral support, yet at the same time, the voters don't seem to align with him on some issues?
Yeah, I mean, my answer to that would be if you look at past elections, it just isn't much evidence that Abbott is not in the mainstream of the overall electorate in terms of his view on most issues. What we don't know is whether the Uvalde massacre and the Roe versus Wade Dobbs decision are going to somehow change the electorate heading towards the November election. My guess is those issues are going to be blips, are going to be short-term blips that will change opinion in the short term when they're in the news, but they'll fade over time. Look, Democrats have never had success in Texas running statewide on a gun control platform. It just doesn't work in Texas. I'm sort of dubious that Uvalde is going to somehow change decades and decades and decades of public opinion on that issue, at least voter opinion on that issue.
It almost seems as if they're running two different campaigns. Beto O'Rourke obviously highlighting abortion, highlighting access to guns and gun reform, while the governor seems to want to focus on the economy and the border, and they're not even speaking the same language at this point.
I guess we'll know the Democrats have concluded that their current strategy is not working if they pivot back to talking about the economy. The problem is it's a tough issue for them to talk about. They don't want to distance themselves from the White House. They don't want to criticize the president's policies and decisions. And they want to basically feed their base. They know the more they feed their base, the more they can raise money from small dollar donors across the country and even some major donors. But this most recent poll showing Beto down only 6, I think, is going to help him raise money. I know there's no doubt he's been using that just in the last couple of days since the polls come out. The challenge is going to be when you go from registered voters to likely voters. I think this race is going to change.
Matt, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks.